Welcome, everybody. This is Rafa here with Mystic Times. I'm very happy once again to be here sharing a beautiful conversation that we're about to have with my guest, Betty Kovács. She's been on the show before. I'm going to link to our previous conversation, which was about a magical time in history that I don't know, I resonate very much with, and that isn't that known, and that also has all these subtleties of alchemy and hermeticism and the occult and the esoteric. And I don't know, I guess we're all kind of nostalgic, the people of today who are interested in all these subjects. I guess we're kind of nostalgic of a time when I guess we all were alive here in a previous incarnation, likely, when we were part of movements such as the Winter Kingdom, which is the subject of that previous conversation that we had. So without further ado, let me just say hello to Betty Kovács. How are you, Betty?
Oh, I am fine, and thank you so much, Rafa.
Great, yeah, I'm very happy, as we were just speaking before we started recording. I'm very happy to share once again the space and the time with you, even though it still has to be through the computer and through the ones and zeros and its conversion into images and sound, which is in itself magical and amazing that we can be in such far away places and still be able to connect almost in real time, right?
Yes, it's true. I sometimes miss that actual human contact, but then I think I know so many people in the world now that I would never have met without this particular kind of communication. So I'm grateful for it.
Yes, definitely. So am I. This is I'm a sun in Aquarius. So this is, for me, a very big expression of the Aquarian technology and revolution and community, you know, expressed through, right now, through the metal and the plastic of the machines. But I hope one day we during this era, and soon, preferably, we will start remembering how to do it by ourselves. I think we've got that yes, ability latent or latent within us, right?
Absolutely, I do think that. And I wanted to say, before you ask your first question, I wanted to respond to that nostalgia for these earlier ages in which there was a renaissance of this inner spiritual soul knowledge, because it is a renaissance today. We are in that fifth renaissance period of discovering who we were in the past. And I think it's so natural, we feel nostalgic for that past, but then we remember, oh, we are those people today, as you were suggesting. And while there's a great deal of darkness, and I think that darkness is a result of all of the suppression of those Renaissance periods in the past, so that there are those people who believe there's nothing but matter, and that they will take over our evolution and transhumanize us through artificial intelligence and control and totalitarian centralized governments. They are what we have to become aware of, because they are a result of the failure, or that is, I don't want to call it a failure, the inability of these Renaissance periods to continue their development. But we are that continuation today. And we're up against some difficulties, as they were, and that's why they couldn't continue. So we are those people today.
You bring up so many important and beautiful points. We already have a kind of idea of where we want to take this conversation, but let me just see if I can comment something on what you just spoke, because it's so interesting to how you put this transhumanist agenda of like technologizing or something, technologizing humanity. How that, from what you say, you know, I've never thought of it in that way, like how they are, or that view is kind of the foe of the foe, as in the enemy or the adversary that we are facing today, as I don't know what to call it, all of us mystics or whatever.
Yes, Yes, it's really important that we do understand how they could possibly think the way they do. Well, if we look back to the 1600s, 1660, when the Royal Society for Science was born, there were mystics among those scientists. They were also scientists, but they knew from the church the suppression was so great that they knew that the only kind of science they could do is material science. And eventually, people forgot that these scientists had ever been mystics as well. And so they never did develop a technology, you might say, or the tools to study non-material dimensions of reality. But they assumed that since they didn't, there was nothing. The best scientists would never do that. They would know they have to have the data, but it just became a belief system that there is nothing but matter without realizing it had been the suppression of the church, which brought about this limited science that we're nothing but matter and we're a fluke of nature and there's no meaning and no purpose. And when we're dead, we're dead. It's false, we know now from quantum physics, but it influenced these people. These are the children of all of that suppression and repression, and they're part of our species. They are our brothers and sisters, even though they might want to do us in. So we have to understand, because really we're all connected. So they are part of us, and we need to heal that misunderstanding within ourselves.
Right. It seems like they like us are trying to reawaken these latent capacities within us, but from a perspective that, as you say, a materialistic perspective that only admits these kind of supernatural abilities of speaking with somebody in another part of the world only through the help or the assistance of matter, right? And yes, they are trying to not unconsciously, but unaware of what they're doing, what it seems like they're doing, if we were to put it in our own words or our perspective, they're trying to reconnect or reawaken the divine feminine as well, but they don't think it can be done from outside of matter, which in itself is going to be a kind of a limiting factor, I guess. I don't know.
Yes, it's interesting if we say they're trying to awaken the divine feminine. I don't know how much they are conscious of that aspect of their being, but I agree with you. And I think it's very important that there's always an aspect in that endeavor to perfect us. There is a longing for something more. And they also, without knowing it, are a result, as I've said, of this limited science, which is an outdated science now. And they're also the result of the Deuteronomist repression of the incredible potential that we have within ourselves as human beings to actually be able within ourselves to experience a consciousness that's so much faster than ordinary consciousness. But they take the Deuteronomist view that we're flawed, we're sinful, we are not worthy of living in the garden of life, so we're exiled. So they see the human being in that way, not, I think, themselves so much. I think when we don't go within and truly allow that soul or the feminine dimension to develop and give us the experience of who we are, that it gets flipped. And they then feel that they're superior, that they themselves egotistically are superior, and that they must create the world, recreate it. And they've even said, we will carry on our own future evolution. And they don't realize that they're the potentials within us. But I think what we see, this darkness that we see, that is an attempt to control us, with a totalitarian, centralized government with no elections, that desire is to be sure they get it done right. They're going to control it because only they know how to do it. But that is the symptoms of the disease of not experiencing soul within one's own self.
Yeah, many times I've said that, and I really think this, that one of the, or perhaps the hardest thing for us humans to do is to feel our feelings and connect to precisely what you're saying, connect to our inner world, because we have repressed so much. We've grown and been taught or been cultured into a way of being that on the one hand disregards the inner world, but on the other hand it actually fears it. So that's why it's disregarded. And it seems this other view that we are talking about, it's like there's some axioms, at the very ground of their philosophy or of their view, that those axioms are flawed and inconsistent within themselves. And so what happens is what you said, they think we are all flawed, so they need to control our evolution because they are the ones that know. But on the deepest part, they think that we're flawed. So how could you be good to continue or create your own evolution if you are flawed? In fact, their views actually point to what we're trying to say from this more esoteric, mystical place, right?
That's true. That's a good way of putting it, Rafa, is that they are living out the flawed aspect of us, you might say, which is the aspect of us that hasn't been allowed to develop. The spiritual, that feminine dimension of heart consciousness in which we feel a thought. So it's, yes, it's how can they bring about a evolution when they themselves are part of that is a part of that flawed aspect. But of course, that makes them really believe that they have another way, and that's the nanotechnology and medicines and drugs and AI, that they will transform us into something better than we were. But as you pointed out so well, it's not from the heart. It's not heart consciousness that they are after, because they guess they don't know that it exists. But as you said, it's feeling. And certainly in the Western world, feeling has been so denigrated. I don't know whether, do you remember, it was a very old show. I think it was a police show in which, when someone would try to tell them something, they'd always say, I don't care how you feel about it. I want the facts. Just give me the facts. And that has been quite an expression of Western culture. Your feelings, I don't care about your feelings, they're my feelings. The important thing is the facts, because that flawed science from the 17th century only dealt with material facts, and it could do nothing with feeling. And I think many people feared those feelings because they didn't let them up, they didn't work with them. And so they repressed it, suppressed it, so that, but I think the Egyptian civilization, which I talk about in Merchants of Light, I think that we see now with the artifacts that are available and the knowledge that now is available from Egypt during its true height, is that they understood so deeply that evolution cannot continue to unfold unless we're in touch with feeling. That is the heart consciousness, how we feel about it, to really allow ourselves to feel it, that civilization won't unfold. And I think that the civilization that heals us has not unfolded. It's now in its great fifth renaissance, and we're remembering these things, that feeling is the root really of all consciousness. Love, we might say.
Yeah, that is amazing. And something magical about this as well is how simple and basic the idea is, but we've become so muddled or whatever in our own mind and our own logic and our conclusions that we've forgotten the very basic things. As far as one of the great techniques of of transformation and continued growth being the breath and breathing and breath work and different kinds of ways of breathing, that I remember the first time I tried one of these modalities, which is called rebirthing, and you would just lie on the floor and begin to breathe kind of deeply and rhythmically with somebody next to you, just holding space and telling you, okay, you can do it, you're doing good. You would start doing that, and you'd have people would have regressions to their childhood, or even before the birth in the womb, or even past lives, and healings through stuff like that. And I remember me being very, again, I'm Aquarian, so I'm very mental, and doing that, I remember one of the main like surprises or recognitions for me was how this technique did not involve the mind. I remember telling the person guiding that retreat that this is incredible. You just lie there and you start breathing, and the mind has nothing to do with the experience or the exercise. It doesn't control it. It's just observing. It's fantastic, and it's such a simple thing that we do all day, every day, all the time. Even when we are distracted, we're still doing it, and we've forgotten how useful and how powerful that simple, not even tool, but that function of the human being is.
Yes, that taking in of spirit, that breath. And when we can no longer take it in, we're not here. We're dead. It's just the most amazing thing. It's that our life is that breath. And you're saying that the conceptual mind doesn't have anything to do with it. All of us, I think, in the West have been brainwashed, either subconsciously or consciously, that the conceptual, rational brain is superior to all of the other brain components. And certainly that was very clear to me when I was in university. And I went to university just to find soul, to find meaning. And instead I was overwhelmed with this rational, conceptual, limited science. But that when I was out of the university and teaching, and I was always focusing on the heart and symbols. I taught myth and symbols for years, symbolic language. And then after our son died, PhD, and I began having experiences, I found that when I was in those experiences, I absolutely felt I was in a total feeling place, and I knew they were real and true. And then when I wasn't in the vision, my conscious mind, I would say my conceptual brain would jump in and start questioning it. And it was as though it couldn't allow something that it didn't believe, or it couldn't allow something that would contradict its superiority. And that, when I became aware of that, I was so shocked, because I thought, I never believed that. But my culture had brainwashed me. And on a deep level, when I was having deep transformative experiences, visionary experiences, it popped up. But eventually it began to realize that it's a partner with the visionary mind, that we have the symbolic brain, actual right brain component that speaks to us in a symbolic feeling language, deeply and profoundly connected to the heart. And it actually is the brain, the right brain, that is primary, that is first in evolution, and it feeds into the rational left brain conceptual thoughts, but they come to it in symbols or poetic logic. So to try to be clearer, that right brain is symbolic. It's first language. Its language is symbolic. And that is connected deeply with feeling. And it's not irrational. You know, in Western culture, we always say, well, oh, these dreams are so irrational. It's just a dream, or these things aren't real, and that it's irrational. It is not irrational. It is logical. These symbols are logical. But as the great early theorist of symbolic language in the 1700s said, it's a poetic logic. and it then feeds into the rational brain, and the rational brain works with it symbolically and then rationally. And that's just a part of who we are. But I love Vico because he helped me so much with that. And he said, the symbolic should never be reduced to the rational, and the rational should never be reduced to the symbolic. They are both our languages, complete in and of themselves, but there must always be that integral and dynamic movement between the two. And in that way, we are able to think feeling thoughts.
Think feeling thoughts. That's a very nice phrase, right? To think feeling thoughts.
And for the brain, he said, for the mind to experience, this is the way that the mind can experience its own wholeness. I love that. But we've only lived in one compartment of the brain, and we only valued it. We didn't even know that the heart is a brain component until recently. Our ancestors knew, but we wiped that off the map until very recently. And heart math, I think we've talked about that before, as an organization people can go to and be absolutely amazed with the scientific studies they've done to show how we are changed with this heart consciousness, how our rational brain even works better. And students in school who were, sometimes they were aggressive or violent or whatever, or just not doing well in school. And parents took them to heart math. And these children, once they learned techniques to connect to the heart, they weren't aggressive anymore. And they were doing so much better in their schoolwork. It's just, they're just scientific studies to show we need that connection to the heart to do well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you and me, we could like talk for a million hours on end, because every time one of us says something, I see like hundreds of branches opening up of questions and ideas to explore together. So it's nice that we have a kind of a few themes that we want to touch on, because especially again, me being Aquarian, I can like go forever and talk about anything, and I see connections between everything. But I love this, how you're reminding us about the right brain, the symbolic, poetic logic of the right brain.
Yes.
And for many years, again, I've had this like understanding, intuition, perception of the world as in part it's been fed or whatever by Eastern mysticism, from Buddhism, Hinduism, etc., how our lives are a dream. But I mean, first I read about it and it kind of started making sense, but then I started seeing so much of life reflecting stuff or pointing me in a certain direction, or crossing my path with somebody else that I needed to meet, and even kind of guiding me through events. So with time I started kind of developing this idea of like the soul, or I guess we could call it the higher self, being kind of like in a third person perspective. It's like looking down on the material world and seeing the human body kind of like in a game, you know. And we, or language again is so hard to help us put these concepts together, because when we say I, what are we really talking about? I think we are talking about two aspects of something, which is, so this first thing is the higher self looking down on the game board, and then there's this other I, which is our personality, our ego. And I've started seeing how there is I see it in myself, and I see it in many people around me, how there's this kind of trend where we are trying to like meld both things together, you know, the player and the character. We're trying to like be kind of like being aware of both at the same time. So like, you know, how you go to do something that's maybe challenging for you, or a kind of to meet with somebody that you don't get along very well, or etc. and you like totally get absorbed by the experience, and you forget about your spirituality, you forget about the Buddha, you forget about everything of that kind. You forget about the poetic logic, you forget about everything being a symbol, and you're just in the experience. Then you get out, or the experience finishes, and you kind of reflect and you say, oh wow, maybe I should have controlled myself a little bit, try not to get mad at this person, because I understand that they're going through whatever they are. And you know, you have this spiritual practice, but when the experience comes, it's like you forget completely about it, perhaps, or likely through habit and stuff that we've been doing all our lives, like responding to outer stimulus in the same way, perhaps in the left brain way always. So we forget this other thing. But then there's these certain times when we go to the experience, and even though it's a challenging experience for us, we are able to stay awake and be present in the experience. And like those moments for me are so precious, you know. It's, for me, they are times when we are in both in the soul and in the body, and there's like this golden thread that joins the consciousness through both of them in a way that allows for the body and the mind to not get so wrapped up in the experience. Do you experience any of this?
I think, well, you know, of course, we all do, but I think that throughout my life, and it's been a long one at this point, and I think in my earlier days when those things happened, and I was still so in search of spirit, so in search of soul, if there was such a thing, because after all, I'd been taught there wasn't. I was trying to find it. I was in search of it. But then sometimes, as you described so well, we come in contact with people and we know that we don't want to be like that, and we're upset with their attitudes. But I have come to realize that each one of those gave me a gift, because that was my training, you know, to just as you have said it so well, is that I think we are here in matter as a soul, and we are trying to bring these dimensions of soul into matter and have it as a complete unity and harmony. And we're learning how to do that. If we didn't have experiences with people who completely disagree with us, or who do things that we just can't comprehend how anyone could do that, and we see them as very ill. But I think we're learning always how to integrate soul into matter, so that we don't as often do that, or we can see it so well that it doesn't happen as we grow older and older. Although we can always be very surprised that even at the end something like that could, but we get better at it, I would say, much better at it. That I think it's absolutely our heritage to be connected to the spiritual dimension. We're not to live separated from it. And we have been trying, and I think that's why we see such violence. I mean, just crazy violence and killing and doing such harm to other people as well as oneself, that we see that in our world. But that's because not only did we separate from spirit as a culture, we laughed at it. There's nothing but matter. And anyone who thought otherwise was not intelligent. That's certainly in the university, you wouldn't dare bring up. I mean, in the past, I think more so today you can, because there is a tremendous emergence of spirit. But yes, I think that we're learning how to live in the world as a soul, just beautifully integrated into matter. And that our soul's intention, which brought us here, which gave us birth, can actually express itself and live out that intention. But others are always teaching us how to create. I have certainly found in my life that the people who have irritated me most have given me great gifts, And that's what they have to do at that point, and I have to do at this point. And I hope maybe contact with me has done something for them too. But we are creators, and we probably, I think we are, learning how to create universes and worlds. But first of all, we've got to learn how to create our lives in a way that is deeply and profoundly fulfilling, because it is connected to soul, to spirit. But yeah, the ones who disagree with us are the ones who usually teach us a lot, much to our chagrin.
And for sure, I really like this idea you barely mentioned right now of we are learning to create universes. I can totally see it. Like, you make me think of these the ascended masters and stuff like that as being people who perhaps kind of got the game here and were able to like transcend it and continue being in a kind of duality, but in a duality where they are more conscious and aware of their oneness with source, with the universe. And I think that is exactly the trend that I'm seeing in people. Of course, I'm not seeing it necessarily in everybody to the same degree, right? But as far as people with a spiritual practice, or we call it spiritual, but people might be accessing and cultivating this through other means that somebody at first glance would not say that's spiritual. Maybe somebody loves to, I know people who love to swim, for example, and when they're swimming, their conceptual mind shuts off completely, and they are in another kind of perception, which is this first language of ours, as you called it, the symbolic mind. And it's been so wonderful to read the book, and it's a big book. I have it right here with me. I've recommended it to many of the guests here. I mean, it's a pretty big book, and I'm a kind of reader that, especially with this one that's resonated so much with me, I like to like take my time to like digest it and stuff. So I want to get to the end, but at the same time, I'm like going through each page and absorbing and soaking on the information and the heart that it's very clearly imbued into the book, that you've imbued into the book. And there's this idea that you mentioned in the book of the soul. Look, I even wrote down what page so as to look for it. But it's this part of when you're talking about the soul not showing up only, like the soul is trying to speak to the character. The player is, for me, it's like I see kind of our life or this particular physical life as a timeline or whatever, kind of like the root of a tree or a branch in a tree. And I kind of see my higher self outside of this timeline and like kind of manipulating, but in the good sense, like helping shape the form of this branch and the experiences that form it and that nurture this experience, this life, and also even dropping things within, so like breadcrumbs to help itself awaken within the game, because it seems like one of the challenges of this life is how we, the soul, come down. This Dr. Sue Morter, she says we splat and we splat onto the earth, and then the soul forgets, because I guess it's because of the not to call them the limitations of the physical or the material world, but the specific characteristics of this material world do not allow the memory of the soul to come with it entirely, or at some point there is a kind of forgetting, that happens, and kind of it kind of separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind, where I guess we could say in the subconscious mind, everything is stored there that we can reawaken through learning to recognize these breadcrumbs that are being put in the along the path by ourselves. And so you speak here, I wanna read from a very, very short phrase from, it's in chapter 6. Here we go. So yeah. 1 of 3. Yeah, I have it here. So the human psyche, that is soul rooted in spirit, communicates to human consciousness through the language of metaphor. I guess that would be like the symbolic and poetic logic, I guess, that could be connected to that. Through the language of metaphor, symbol, story/myth, feeling, intuition, and even outer events. And for me, when I read that, it was so fascinating, because again, I have this kind of theory or I don't know, hypothesis, or it's not even that, this understanding and this intuition, you know, that exactly that the soul is communicating to the character, to me. My soul is talking to me through the symbolic properties of the things that are in the world, right? So you could see a material thing and say, okay, one of its properties, it's made of ceramic, it's yellow and gray or whatever, but then there's a whole other layer, right, connected to it, which maybe we can see it's emotional, it's energetic, it's metaphorical, it's symbolic, mythic, etc. That this thing emanates meaning as well as physical properties, right?
Yes.
I said a bunch of things. Sorry if it was
Well, no,
so long.
that's yeah, a lot of things. And I think that I want to respond on many levels to it if I can, that certainly I think the soul has that view of our lives from that would give it as if it were outside of us in the spirit world looking at what's going on. But our job is to be sure that at the same time we can have soul within us living this life. So it's both seeing the whole picture and guiding us, as you would say, with that wonderful fairy tale symbol of leaving breadcrumbs. Yes, I think the soul has breadcrumbs all over the place for us if we would just see them and follow them. So our goal is to be aware and listen to the soul's perception of the larger picture that it can view at all times, and also allow it to be within us, really informing and guiding us so that we will see those breadcrumbs, you know. But it's that ability to look at and pay attention. Kamlak Center has a radio show through Forever Family Foundation, and people call in about their experiences. And one of the persons is a medium, and she's always saying, you know, we really need to pay attention. You know, we can go through life think, oh, that was a coincidence, or oh, that just happened, or whatever. No, really pay attention. And she has so many things happening in her life. And she's saying, yes, but that's because I pay attention. So I think we really want to live with soul integrated. And there are many people, interestingly, who are being born today who do remember better than most of us. And I think the work that we're all doing today is making it possible for those children to be born on the earth in which they are remembering, so they're not losing so much time getting to that knowledge so that they can try to remember. And my husband Istvan had a vision, which I talk about in Merchants of Light, of the Merchants of Light, that here is a symbol of a reality, that of beings or an energy field, both in spirit dimension, but that has now activated this energy field on the earth, in which we can more easily feel and live with soul inside of us, we're more easily connected to the spirit realm. So I think merchants of light are beings in another world, like great masters that help us and guide us, even to help the soul guide us. But they are also an energy field, which I think is now on the earth. And we have children being born, remembering, and then we have so many of us waking up and asking for soul's guidance on a daily basis. Ishvan also had an experience in which he realized that there was the children being born will have a new ring of DNA. He said, maybe that's symbolic, I don't know. But he said, I knew that if we can do our work, these children can be born. And it was so interesting because I was reading Mary Rodwell's work. She works with children who are very exceptional in these ways. And these children, I was so amazed years later to read that they said that they have activated a new ring of the DNA. And I thought, oh, that was Ishvan's vision. And you didn't know whether it was symbolic. It's both symbolic and real. And so I think that I had probably the most powerful vision I had in my life. It was so real, and yet it was otherworldly, so completely in this world, but it was a vision. And it was of a disc of light. And I knew it was cosmic consciousness. And it came, that I was meditating with we were involved in a ritual with 2 other women. So it was 3 of us. And this disc hovered over my head, and out of the center of it, it was circular, of course, spiraled a female being with a satin 4-cornered hat. And I could see that she had on white hat, white satin dress to her waist, and she circled into my heart. But what she said was a message for the earth when she said, first of all, she said, we are the light. We are the light circling round your planet. And I knew things that I wouldn't have known otherwise. I knew that light had been collecting for a long time. And she said, can you feel us? That's what she really wanted us to do. Can you feel us? We are here to be with you all 3. And I knew that that light, now there was so much longing on the earth and longing for love and ability to love, that she then said that they were ready to connect to our planet. It sounds strange, but that was the most incredible thing. These other 2 did not see. She was singing through me, so they heard that, but they didn't see it. They knew that, and we all felt we'd been born for that moment. And we felt that energy just come flowing through and anchoring in the earth. And we also felt that that was probably taking place many places and many times on the earth, because this light that we actually had drawn by our attempt to be in touch with it and our ability to love. I always think that if people think I'm not doing anything, I wish I could do more. It's the depth of their love that is connecting that light and rooting it in the planet and helping this merchants of light or matrix of light, maidens of light, to connect to the planet. And with that light, we have a new energy field. And I just love to think of it that people on the earth help to bring this, to root it in the earth by our ability to feel and to love. And that has given me, when I got down, I would always remember that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful tale, and a beautiful, not just a tale, I mean, a beautiful experience that you've had. Mm-hmm. More and more, I think people are opening up to this sort of experiences. I've had people relate to me after doing, I guide sound baths and in groups, and many people have told me not just how powerful the sound healing was for them, which is something that is in itself magical, that just a vibration or an instrument or an emotion that is transmitted through sound could help heal the emotions of somebody.
Frequencies, yeah.
And I've even had people tell me that they perceived and even saw within their third eye, I guess, entities like holding space for us, and white entities sending energy, you know, stuff like that, which is amazing. I haven't felt them myself during the sessions, or seen them really, but I've also been working with Akashic Records readings, and I've received some information that has been so mind expanding for me, and that, like, connections to ancient past and ancient rituals that were intended to bring a particular kind of Christ consciousness into the world, and just connecting to things like that has been so beautiful for me, and it's helped me reconnect to all of this symbolic language, the poetic logic of life. You know, how you would be somebody in a past life, and then through synchronicity and poetry be who you are today, and start seeing the connections of, oh, look, this aspect of my personality is connected to something that happened in this previous lifetime, which I wasn't aware. And I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I wanted to also share a kind of experience similar to what you just shared of this female entity coming. It's different, but it's similar in how magical and otherworldly it is.
Yes, tell it.
Yeah, sure. So I have told it before in the show, but I think it's very relevant to what we're speaking now. So I was like 11 years old. You know, I had been going to a school where I was bullied. So eventually I was able to change schools. And one day I was sleeping over at a friend's house, a friend from this new school. So the difference being, so this new school was a very liberal school, a very, like, I remember the headmistress, she would come and teach us some very basic yoga stuff, you know, like turning the neck and breathing and very simple things like that. Yeah. So whereas in the other school, it was a very British type of school. So, you know, very different, very materialistic and yeah, left brain, versus this other school, which was more artistic and more open to find what are your talents, and let's focus on that, you know, and let's nurture and accept all of that. So one night I went for a sleepover at a friend's house, and eventually, okay, we fell asleep, and then at a certain point I woke up. It was the morning. I could see the sunlight, you know, outside the room. So the house had this living room. From where I was sleeping, I could see the door of the room, like to my right, and in the opposite side of the room. And then I could also see a kind of arch that led into the living room, where I would see the light of the sun coming, shining into the house. I guess it had a kind of a glass roof or something like that. So I wake up and I look towards the door, and from the door, I see this kind of purple smoke starting, or purple cloud, or a cloud of purple smoke coming in, like very conscious and like alive, you know, not just random smoke coming into the room, but like a thin slither of smoke coming in, which starts to get a little bit bigger as it enters the room. And on top of this purple smoke, I see arms crossed like this, a tiny genie, a tiny purple genie sitting on the purple smoke, which he comes in, turns his head around, looks at me. I was like just lying on the bed, completely awake, but at the same time, I had just woken up and I was seeing something impossible. So I see this, he looks at me just with a very neutral face, no necessarily any kind of message or expression or emotion, just like a very, not even negative in that being very stern or anything, just a very centered kind of consciousness, you know. He just looks at me, turns around, and the smoke turns around, and he leaves the room through the same door he came in, kind of goes sort of towards the living room, and it's gone. The experience finishes there, and I didn't do anything like go after it or see where it had gone. I just stayed in bed, like, I don't know,
Yes, thinking
astounded by
about
that.
being in that energy.
You know, and I was very young, but today, you know, it's like 22 years later, I'm still like reflecting on that experience, still puzzled by it, and still thinking, trying to extract the meaning that came from there. And today, or nowadays, I'm thinking, or I'm feeling like this was kind of like, of course, a kind of breadcrumb put into my life by my higher self. But what's the meaning of this thing? And I'm thinking the meaning is connected to this experience helped me always kind of in the back of my mind, always know that there was something else going on, right? I was never religious or spiritual growing up. I was always allowed to yeah, if you want to try going to catechism or whatever, because my previous school was it had kind of a Catholic background. So if you want to try it and see how it feels. I never really connected, so I just, spirituality and religion for me growing up wasn't a thing, wasn't a thing. But this experience completely marked me, and it totally showed me that there was something else going on, and I'm so grateful for this. I wish the genie had said something or given me some extreme information, or some prophetic thing, but no, it just was there, and it made eye contact with me, and that changed my life.
That's it. And that was the language, the symbolic language of soul. I mean, for it to come to you, and here is soul in its high concentration, and looking at you in that concentrated way, it's like a reminder of who you are, who perhaps you have been in another life, but certainly who you are. I mean, in a way, it's almost stronger than our conceptual brain's language, rational language, although I love that language, and I want spirit to talk to me in that language too. But the symbol of how powerful it was, that it came to you, that you had whatever frequency was needed to bring that to you, so that you could see that deep concentration of soul. I think it's beautiful, and it helps us to, something like that experience would have helped you so much to remember who you are. You know, we're born into this world, and certainly in Western culture, we're told we're nothing, you know, and it's, I think more than any, the ego is only a problem because we don't know who we are, because we think we're nothing. So we have to snatch and grab at everything in the outer world to make ourselves look good and big and important. But if we knew that we are that you are what you saw, that dimension of your being, and it's probably an ability, that kind of focus, soul concentration is probably an ability that you achieved in a past lifetime, perhaps, but that you have that, and to know that, I think, is so powerful. I can remember when I was young, and my first teaching job in college, and I walked in, I had just a cotton dress on, and I was carrying my books, and the men they were dressed in suits and ties and carrying briefcases. And I felt so insignificant. I can remember feeling that, but I knew that feeling of insignificance in a lot of different situations, because our culture didn't help us to we are. And I think I didn't really
You cut
find
off for
that
a moment. Our culture didn't help us what?
didn't help us to experience the soul that we really are. This is powerful. This is an energy, our soul energy, that is so strong that it can intend itself into matter, into a human body. And certainly our culture has been so suppressed and beaten down that we can't remember. It takes quite a while to remember. And that's why I think this memory came to you at 11. That's incredible. And the more we can remember, the more we intensify the field of memory so that our children can remember. I think my son remembered certainly more than I did. And he helped me, but especially talk about outer events. His death helped Ishwan, my husband, and me to remember. And even in the visions that followed after his death, he wanted us to know he's fine and that certainly life continues and he was joyful and still creating. But he also, it was like intensified focus to remember why you chose to come in this life now. And remember how we knew we were going to do this, we three. But his death, an outer event, for the first time, I really put all the pieces together and I knew, I have no doubt anymore. But my culture, my university, the training was to train all of that inner knowledge that we come with out of us and kill the memory. So we have to do extraordinary means, lengths to remind ourselves, to create those breadcrumbs. And I think that this is a time in which many of us are doing that. But this is a beautiful experience, Rafa, and I'm so glad you told me. And it is a very powerful energy within you.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it. Especially, I'm happy to meet people with whom I feel comfortable sharing it.
Exactly.
Because I look at, I can see how irrational and impossible the experience is or could be within our cultural context. Use the kitty again.
Well, I think we know our culture would call it irrational, but of course it is symbolic, which is true. It is something true. Symbolism, actually, all of the stories of our soul are structured by that organizing principle of the human psyche, so that the stories that the fairy tales, the core of myths and so on, and dreams are all structured by this organizing principle, which is poetically rational. But if a culture is not accustomed to that language, it's like if you tell someone who has no understanding of this language, then it seems to them irrational because they're working out of the irrational brain. When I was teaching myth and symbol, I had a dream that I went to a country whose language I did not know, but I went there to teach them their first language, their native language, which was symbolism. But it's the symbol exists in the subtle world. It is a reality, but we have to know that language, and we have to find those people who know it in order to tell these experiences. Otherwise, we do seem quite out of sorts to them, irrational to them.
It definitely happens when in our culture today, you know, we have many myths from ancient cultures, and we don't really know how they perceived, you know, when they were told or they read whatever the myth of a certain character or a certain story, we don't really know how they, you know, within their own context and their own time period, how they interpreted that information. I had also this kind of vision once of our ancestors, like many very long time ago, our ancestors having this kind of ability to dream awake. So they would like kind of, maybe one would start, you know, this idea of the storyteller and the people around the fire. So the storyteller would start weaving a story, and people within their minds would start to like identify with the characters, kind of like we do today with movies or with a theater perhaps, but it would be a kind of such a vivid experience within the mind or the mind's eye of each person, and they would kind of start to share a common dream all together, guided in a way by the story that was being told to them. And the story would be mythical, most likely, is what I guess we could call the kind of stories being told. And but each one dreaming awake this thing would kind of identify with the characteristics of the different characters, the personalities, even the places where the stories happen. They would all like get something that then is very hard to express with the left brain, because it's a something that you know, it's a feeling kind of thing, it's a kind of gnosis. And I remember having this vision and understanding, oh wow, our minds and our perceptions and our way of connecting with ourselves and with our soul is so different today than it may have been for our ancestors, that maybe we would be like, if we met one, they would be, or we would be completely aliens and extraterrestrials for them.
That's, yeah, it's really possible, isn't it? I think that collective experience is often expressed in indigenous cultures. And there was a movie, I can't remember a Hollywood movie, but it was Green Mansions or Green Forest, something like that. But in it, the young were initiated with a particular sacred plant or substance. And and then later as a group, they would all use this particular substance, and they all had the same experience. I mean, they experienced the same realities. And but that also, when I was in Russia, there was a person who said he wanted me to understand earlier thinking in the village. He said in the villages, very often people didn't have to even speak. They were so connected, and intuitively they could just work together and know what the other was thinking and doing. And I think that is true before we so differentiated, you know, certain aspects or certain brain components. But when I was in Peru with a shamanic group, and we went to Bolivia, to Lake Titicaca, and we spent the whole day there meditating and that kind of thing. In the evening, there was we were right by the mountain that overlooked Lake Titicaca, and there were these burial towers there for the Incas, and not a person was there except our group. And that night we worked with San Pedro, and so I was so much in my rational brain, I just prayed and meditated for some spirit for it to come through. I was desperate. I just finished my doctorate, and I thought, I've done it with the rational mind, I'm through with that. And suddenly I began to see that whole mountain was absolutely covered with spirit beings. And what did they say? I think you move from the tonal into the nagual, that you could move from present time and space into spirit. I don't know if I have the words right. But at any rate, I saw these spirit beings, and then so bad I was caught in this conceptual brain that I thought, so these shamans have gone into town, Puno, and brought back people. At a certain time, they would appear on the mountain. Just as I had that thought, the spirit beings on the mountain showed me that they were very fluid, that they didn't have real bodies. They were fluid beings. And I thought, oh, they're not human beings. And then I saw one little boy run down the mountain on that on the right side. And then I looked to the left, and I saw one of them step off of the mountain. Well, then I knew it wasn't a person from Puno. This beautiful winged being, white winged being, stepped off of the mountain, turned to our fire circle and started coming toward it. Well, I guess I wasn't ready for it because I looked away. And I think that's what we do when we're not ready. But later, I discovered that those who did see anything, we saw the same things. And my friend was from Ecuador. She and I had been very, very close friends. And she had been a student of mine, as a matter of fact, much earlier. And then we became friends and we were always reading and talking to each other. And so when it was happening, I wouldn't look at her, I wouldn't take my eyes off it. I said, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" She said, "Yes." She didn't know it. But later she told me first what she had seen. And it was exactly what I had seen. And later, in fact, a couple of years later, I talked to one of the shamans and he said, "Oh," he said, "you saw that figure with wings." And he said, "He always is present at our rituals there." So I thought this was a collective experience. And I think we can, for certain reasons, have these collective visions, and it's wonderful. Because we are one after all, you know.
Yeah, and I think we are able to like understand each other. I mean, understand each other's personality and role through these kind of experiences. It's possible to like, you know, like in this vision that I told you about, people would have this collective awake kind of dream, movies, lucid dream, something like that. They would have this experience. It was totally normal, and they would be able to like understand through I guess resonance with the different characters of the story. They could maybe understand, oh, that's why this guy is the way he is, because of this aspect of the story.
That's so good.
And that's why I am like that, and etc. So people would like bond without even doing something physical necessarily together, but kind of sharing a collective dream mind or something like that.
That is beautiful, and what a way to grow. And we have been cut off from that. But our generations that are on the planet now, I think, are really beginning to bring that back, because when we think of the people, I mean, in the United States, people are killing people serially all the time now. When I was young, we never heard of anything like that. And I remember I was out of college when I heard the first incident of someone killing several people. It was so horrible. Now we have it. What we're looking at is a pervasive mental, deep disturbance within our culture. This is where there's an outer, these outer happenings are definitely a reflection of what we have not done in the soul work. And so this way of, in the story, my husband is from Hungary, and he remembers as a child, an old man by the fireplace, and the kids would come and he would tell these stories, and they were magical. And yes, they could think, I don't know whether they did collectively, but they certainly, I think my husband grew probably a lot as a child by imagining himself in these worlds. But we're trying to bring that back, all of us, and to heal these children who are so lost and separated from soul.
Yeah, and again, in this thing that you're telling about the serial killings, etc., we can look at that just as material thing, and okay, let's some people will say, okay, so let's install the death penalty and let's get rid of guns or whatever different material action or whatever. But also we should start interacting with the events and trying to see in a collective way, okay, what is this symbolic of? You know, we can, many of us in the spiritual path, we are able to see, okay, so this thing that's happening in my life, it's trying to teach me something, it's trying to show me something. Therefore, I'm seeing the symbolic or the mythic language within the events that are happening, the breadcrumbs that are being put into my life. And how about we start seeing that in a collective way? This situation that's been going on for the past, it's almost 2 years. What is it teaching us? Why did we, or why did our souls, or this higher aspect of our collective, why did it choose to bring such an extreme kind of thing into our lives? What is that there to teach all of us?
Yes, and I think this is, those are the outer events that reflect what we are not doing or doing. And certainly, if we just look at all of the killings, we have to say that our species, especially concentrated in certain areas, is self-destructing. It's precisely killing itself. And of course, it's not connected to heart, but so many of these people who are doing it need love, they need the heart, but they don't have it, or they're deeply and passionately disturbed without what they need to nurture their soul lives. But it's very clear symbolism. We as a species are destroying ourselves. And then if we look at the virus, one can look at it as a virus of the soul. And if we see how we did not respond to it, those in charge, intelligently or compassionately, and medicines were denied that could have prevented it and healed it. So when we look at it that, we see this is another form of self-destruction, but calling it self-healing. And we need to see that for what it is. Many people don't really know. For instance, in the United States, there was no protocol given for healing or how to treat this virus. And yet there were doctors who knew. They knew there were medicines for 50 years. And so when we look at that and look at ourselves as both those doing that and those who are experiencing it, we are a species, again, it's self-destructive. And so the language is really clear. It's not necessary for us to be angry with a certain group who's doing this. And no, we need to see it as a species. It is a self-destructive thing because we could have eliminated a pandemic or avoided it. But there were those self-destructive aspects within our species. So the symbolism is clear.
Yeah, those aspects were trying to become, not to become conscious, but to be so in your face that we would become conscious of them. And
well, that's true. Yes, that they're so insane. So you can't believe it, that it's trying to get our attention. Look at what as a species you're doing to yourselves, you know.
Yeah, one of my spiritual friends says that when you're not paying attention to what the soul is whispering, the soul needs to yell at you, to scream at you.
Yes, and yeah, that's so true. And Jung, this had always impressed me in growing up, that Jung said, what you failed to do within soul, you will have to live it out in the outer world. And that's what we're doing. And we're destroying ourselves. And if we can become aware of that, instead of blaming one group or the other, say, as a species, look what we're doing. Look what we're doing. What is it we're missing? What is it that we long for? Let's find it together.
Yeah, Jung was, I don't know where he came from, but he was a very enlightened master as well. He brought some amazing, like fast forward technologies of understanding the mind, understanding the collective mind, understanding the spirit, the symbols.
Oh, he did. He was my mentor when I was in my last year of college, I met a young man from Andover Newton Seminary, and he was assigned his first church. So he had a party and he invited many of his friends from Andover Newton, and I was there. Well, they were talking about mathematics, physics, Carl Jung, the human psyche. I did not have a ghost of an idea of what they were talking about, and I kept quiet, but I learned. And afterwards, my friend took me into his library and I borrowed Modern Man in Search of a Soul. And that was the beginning. For me, he was so valuable. He gave me that thread like the Baba Yaga does in the fairy tales, throw that ball of thread out before us. And I followed that thread. And I had a dream not long after that, that I was in the forest, very dark, but I saw light. I went toward it. It was a little cottage. I knocked on the door, and when Carl Jung opened it, he had silver hair and a rubedo, the red robe of the rubedo in alchemy. And I saw all these beautiful books in leather lined of ancient knowledge. And he allowed me to come in. Well, I tripped as I went across the threshold and flew into the room on my stomach. And I thought, well, I didn't know anything, but I thought, well, I showed up. I'm here. And he let me in. And that was the beginning of a long relationship through his work. And I'm so grateful for it. One person can do a lot. And it doesn't have to be in terms of volumes of work. It can just be through the heart and the feeling that one can help others to find their path.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful when you can be in contact and in contact with people, you know, that can talk as much as about things like mathematics and physics, but also about the spirit and symbolism.
I know. Wow. They saw the relationship. It was wonderful. Yeah. And it was really an initiation for me to see these young people, young men there with their girlfriends, and that they were so intent and understanding and understood Carl Jung, but also physics, and saw the relationship. It was, well, I didn't know what I was listening to, but I started learning as a result of just being in the room with them.
Yeah, for me, it was very important when I made this trip with my girlfriend. We went to live in Brazil, in the, what you call it, in the mato. So it would be not jungle, deep jungle, but in the mountains, and very, very simple kind of living with a friend and a few other friends. We went there to live for some time, and his house was close to there. And I remember one day he showed me this book by Fritjof Capra. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but yes, the Tao of Physics. And yes. I just saw like 2 or 3 pages, and I was like, oh, wow, yeah, definitely. I understand whatever he's trying to say in this book. I already understand it, yeah.
Oh, yes, he's such another significant person. And I think it's in this book, Merchants of Light, that I tell about his vision when he's by the ocean. And he saw the universe in a way that he understood it as a physicist, but it was a visionary experience of how matter comes into being and the dancing of Shiva. You know, he really understood. It was a beautiful expression of a physicist understanding of the universe. You know, he's done so much good work. There's so many people. And, you know, when I was even in high school, nobody ever talked about anything like this. It wasn't yet emerging.
Yeah, the Western culture seems to be growing kind of at a different pace, a different rhythm, because again, yeah, his book and those couple of pages that I saw were like, one left page was I don't remember if the order, but let's say the left page was a scientific or physics formula, and on the right page it was like a page from an old Vedic kind of script or something like that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And they looked mirror images of each other. Even now, through this lens of having read your book and all my experience since then, definitely the symbolic mind and the conceptual mind reflecting each other and being complementary to each other. Yeah.
That's right. Always communicating. And Capra certainly saw that modern physics, quantum physics, was an expression of the Eastern spiritual field of energy. He saw that and beautifully wrote about it.
Yeah, definitely. We are just, as a society, as a Western society, we're just scratching the surface of spirit, and I'm so happy that we're doing it. I want to respect your time. I know we can talk for a million hours. Like I said
we can
before.
Meet again.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd be very happy to talk again and to continue exploring the different topics in your book. And as we've had the idea of looking at the different, we're in the 5th Renaissance of this this I don't know what to call it, of the feminine revival, the alchemic, the soul, reconnecting with the soul. And yeah, we can definitely look at the other four that came before, and look deeper at the one we're living. And I don't know how much what's happened during the last couple of years, how much it informs it informs you and your understandings that you placed in this book, which came, I don't know the year it came out, but
2019 at the very end.
Wow, exactly. So I don't know if what's been happening recently changes something for you, or if you see it as a moving forward for this fifth Renaissance, or a moving backward. What do you see in a few words?
Well, I certainly see that Renaissance is here, but we have to deal with the darkness as I described before, and we have to know it for what it is, which it could be very depressing, but we have to remember that the light and the dark are here. We've gathered energy from those 4 previous Renaissance periods. That is not lost, it's within us. And we couldn't confront, we were not really able to do battle with those forces which kept soul suppressed and repressed. That darkness has grown, and it's very, very strong now in our species. And I think that given that the plan is to transhumanize us and through gene editing and nanomedicine and technology that sort, we won't be who we are now. And who we are now is not known, but for those who do know, we have tremendous potential. So given the darkness that we're up against, I think this is the battle. This we must, and how do we do battle with it? We must first of all become conscious of who we are, and at the same time, we must realize how our history has brought so many of the children into this crazy virus of needing to control and do it oneself and know and live only out of the left brain. For them, there's only science, and they don't know about what the various Renaissance periods have awakened that knowledge. They don't know that. So I would say, yes, it's the 5th one. And I think that we must really sink into this deep soul knowledge of who we are and be able to see our brothers and sisters who want to change us and control us as the virus that develops when we don't become who we are. And my husband and I both had the vision of this ML is also, it's the hexagram coup working on what has decayed. And our son said to us, read this hexagram carefully. It is your work, and it is the work of the earth. Now, this is coming from the spirit so powerfully. And I think it's been my destiny to really look deeply into the decay. It's in me, in our culture, but that deep decayed virus, you might say, as a virus is a symbol of it, of wanting to transform, transhumanize us and control us and create a worldwide global culture in which we have no choice. It's the world that began developing in the 1930s in this kind of way. And Aldous Huxley saw its dangers when he wrote Brave New World. That's what is coming now. If we don't recognize this decay within our culture and ourselves and transform it through love and light and a connection to spirit. It's quite a battle, but I don't think it's going backwards or forwards. We must do this battle to heal our species. And battle is not a good word. We must do this work to heal ourselves and our species.
this dance or this play, but it still feels so important that we can't think of it as play yet. But maybe we could have it kind of like a symbol of something to reach. Imagine if we could be living this thing and thinking of it as play, you know, with that being so relaxed.
Well, it is, you know, it's the great game of life. And one thing that I experienced, and my husband too, very deeply, is that while we're doing all this, we have to play. We must have joy. And the earth itself needs our laughter, our joy, and our confidence that we can do this work. Because we love ourselves and we love those who are ill. And we're all one. But we need to laugh. We need to have joy in the world. We need to celebrate everything we can, you know, because we are playing a game. It is the universal game.
Yeah, what helps me keep the faith is to think that let's call it to think that the light has already won. So no matter what happens, there is only truth, or there is only bliss. That's all there is. And right now we are very deep in a kind of trance where we have forgotten that, but in essence we've already won. Let's say we are the development of this game, of this play, is always light and love. So when I'm down and when I'm like too focused on stuff going on that brings me down, I eventually reach this point when I remember, okay, no, we've already won. Let's just try to have a more positive attitude, a more playful attitude towards the inner work as well as the outer work. And and definitely the work that you brought forth, that you've done, is amazing. It's super healing, and it's so so valuable, you know, for this time. I definitely once again recommend people getting this book and reading it, because I don't know, it's one of the greatest books that I've read in my life, because it's helped me. I mean, I don't mean this as a you know, to rub your ego or anything, but it really, it's helped bring, like, put in words stuff that I already knew but I couldn't definitely totally express. And it's a very powerful book. And what you were saying about the working on the decade made me think of, today I was thinking about mushrooms, you know, and when you said that, oh, like the mushrooms do, you know, they work on what's decayed and they transform it back into cycle of life. So I guess that's
life. Yeah, the life process is that this new world that we are creating is fertilized by that decay. And my husband was I try to remember this too when I get kind of down, is that he said ML only comes when we're ready to bring this transformation about into a new world. He said they never come. We have to call them for them to come. And when we call them, we are ready. And they never come unless they know the light will be, what should we call it? Not the winner, but the light will prevail.
Yeah, it's hard to
he
find
had total confidence. So,
yeah, and by ML he meant the Merchants of Light, right? The title of the book.
And this energy field, and us at this time, and those who are being born, is that field is only possible when we are going to bring forth the transformation we're seeking.
Yeah, and I think we're ready. So Betty, this has been again a fantastic experience for me. I'm very happy to connect with you and to connect, you know, with myself, you know, through the work that you've done in your book, and through our conversations. It really helps me to get more clarity around how I feel and what my understandings and intuitions are. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity, thankful for your time.
So much. I'm so grateful for you, Rafa, because you have important work to do.
Well, thank you, thank you. I hope
Okay, well,
yeah, I know. I mean, I hope to be up to the standards that you've set on your own work, because definitely it's beautiful, and I hope, you know, through, for example, the podcast, I hope to impact somebody, at least, you know, in a way that it helps them start to ask the questions that will help them remember who we are, who they are.
That's exactly it. If we remember, each person will remember who he or she is, then they will be doing the work. I mean, they have it. The gift, the light is within us, each person. And we've been told that isn't true. Now we know it's true. So it's remembering that.
Yeah. Well, it's so hard to say goodbye, but
we will, but we'll talk again.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Rafa. I so enjoyed talking with you.
Sure, thank you. Okay, and thank you so much to all of you guys out there watching. I hope this has been insightful for all of you and inspiring, you know, to look within. And well, yeah, I'll leave links for. Oh no, please, Betty, go ahead, share your website, etc., with people where they can find your work.
Oh, okay.
And I will also leave links in the description, but yeah, just for those that are listening.
That's good. Yes, it's through, well, of course you can buy the books anywhere books or ebooks are sold, but books can also be purchased through the Kamlak Center. And that is Kamlak, Kamlak. Notice the ML in the center. That happened. I saw later what had happened. It's a mysterious and wonderful thing. So kamlak.com. And on the website, I have articles and also webinars and interviews and videos on the book. So that's all at the Kamlak Center.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And I'm sending you all my love and a great 2022 for you and for Kimberly.
Thank you. You too, Rafa. So much. Thank you so much.
Thank you to both. Bye-bye.